The following is a conversation with Andy Scott, a top-level amateur bodybuilder based here in Glasgow, the greatest city in the whole world. Andy was actually the first guest that came on the podcast, so I was really excited and grateful to him for coming back on to share how his journey is progressing on his quest to become a professional bodybuilder. Hopefully you can see, for those of you that are watching the video, Andy is, well, massive. He's 130 kilograms and there's just slabs of muscle on his body. So he knows a thing or two about how to gain muscle. So if you're interested in how to gain muscle, lose fat, get in shape, this absolutely is a podcast episode that you probably want to listen to. 1 hour and 40 minutes of high quality bodybuilding, nutrition, fitness, fat loss content. The podcast is starting to gain some really nice, decent traction. And I'm very grateful to all of you, the listener, for the support that you've been giving us so far. The best way you can support the podcast is by liking, subscribing, and very kindly giving us a 5-star review. It's starting to climb. People are messaging that I don't know, and even bumped into someone recently who I didn't know who said they were listening to the podcast, which was frankly awesome. We started this podcast over a year ago to produce high quality gut health content for people all over the world. And we've been delivering content once every 2 weeks on a Thursday. For those of you who want to connect with Andy and learn more, or perhaps have him as your personal trainer, which I would highly recommend because he absolutely blasts you and teaches you the true meaning of training to failure. If you think you're training to failure and you've not been trained by Andy Scott or someone similar, you probably actually haven't trained to failure, and it's worthwhile training to failure to get maximum gains. So you can reach out to Andy on Instagram and we'll put the handle for that in the show notes. Thanks again for supporting the podcast. I'm loving it. We've got some amazing content coming up over the coming months. This is Inside Matters. My name is Dr. James McElroy. I hope you enjoy it. How did you get interested in lifting weights and bodybuilding?
So came up through the rugby scene, the Aberdeen rugby scene. Started playing for Aberdeen Wanderers when I was, 10 or something. Went to Grammar FPs when I was 12 and then just played through there. Grew up around a lot of boys that were a lot bigger than me. Didn't particularly play positions I wanted to play. Like I played winger and outside centre most of the time, and I wanted to be like a big boy in the forwards and that, but I was never tall, so that wasn't really. I was out of the question under the age of 16. When I turned 16, I got a membership at the time it was JJB down at the beachfront.
Doesn't exist anymore, does it? Or is it JD?
It's DW now. Is it JD
DW.
now? DW. It's probably still DW. Yeah.
I go to Warehouse in Aberdeen when I'm in Aberdeen.
Yeah.
All results.
Yeah.
Like, Warehouse has got a lot of Panata.
Yeah, well, Warehouse, as you remember, Warehouse didn't look like that when we were younger.
What was it like when we were younger?
I was
grungy.
A bit grungy, just dilapidated, just like not a very motivating place to be. Whereas now it's a full-on bodybuilding gym now.
It really is.
Yeah, it's completely changed and flip-flop what it was
there's a lot
10, 20 years ago.
There's a lot of bodybuilders there.
A lot of competitors there, yeah.
And there's a lot of people that wear, maybe you can explain this, socks and Crocs. Socks and sandals. What is that? I
can't explain that, mate.
You can't explain that?
No,
surely if anyone can explain it.
I'm no Gotwan, but that's an absolute horrific abomination towards fashion. That I don't understand it. Some people pull it off. I don't get it. I personally don't get it. Everyone knows Crocs are horrific. Mm-hmm. Nurses and chefs wear Crocs because they're functional for their job role. It's like we've all banded around this thing that we all know is horrendous, and we're all part of this club. Like, yeah, it's just weird. I don't get it.
It's a trend, isn't it?
It's a trend, isn't it? Yeah, that's what it is.
When I was in Muscle Works in London 2 weeks ago, which by the way has just been renovated.
Which one?
In Bethnal Green.
Oh yeah, we were in that one. Yeah.
So they've tripled the size of it now.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, right, okay.
Yes. So you know, it used to just be upstairs, downstairs.
Yeah.
Now the downstairs is 2 extra rooms.
Oh, right, okay.
And there's another upstairs room as well. For so they've got all the leg kit on a new floor, and then they've got a boxing ring downstairs, and so it's that. I recommend. It's very good.
Yeah.
But anyways, just going back to the socks and Crocs and the socks and flip flops. There's a lot of that in that gym as well.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why?
I have no idea.
Surely just a good pair of trainers, comfy, stability.
That, yeah. But then they'll say, oh, Crocs are comfy and I can slide in and out of them and all that sort of stuff. And I can put wee like gem things on them and stuff. I'm like,
Wow.
whatever. If that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do.
Wow, I've taken us way off piece. So away from this is not a Crocs and sandals podcast. This is the Gut Health, Nutrition and Performance podcast. So
Which is next week, sponsored by Crocs.
Well, I am.
You never know. That's a multi-million-dollar
I am
deal.
looking for sponsorship. So if Crocs are interested, £1 million. No, I'm joking. I'll wear Crocs if someone sponsors.
Yeah, give me £1 million. I'll wear Crocs.
Yeah, sure. I mean, probably
£1 million and one, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, what would I not wear for £1 million? No, there's a few,
podcast would be getting weird.
There's a few things. Yeah, no, I mean, as I said to you, I'm getting more and more comfortable now, going a little bit off piste because
it's fun.
It is fun, and people enjoy it.
Yeah.
So in no particular order, things I'd like to discuss off piste are ancient civilizations, aliens, the future of humanity, philosophy.
I'm deep into the universe just now.
Are you?
Yeah, like
Tell me.
I watched a video last night of how the universe will all come to like a singularity point.
I love that.
In like
I love that.
years 10 to the power of a million. And it will also come to a single point.
So it's
and
not
that'll
gonna
be
come back?
over. But that's what they think. That's one of the theories is it comes to the singularity and then that will then be the next big bang.
So will that be the simulation over? Seeing as
Quite possibly, yeah.
we're all in a simulation anyways, right?
Yeah. So that's like the universe, how our universe will eventually come to an end.
I love that.
And then something will come from that, and then it'll just repeat and repeat and repeat. But it was literally like 1 to the power of 1 million years, so that you can't even comprehend that number.
It's an incomprehensibly large number. Yeah. So it's 1 with 1 million zeros after it.
Yeah. Something. Well, that's not officially. I'm just kind of summarizing, but.
Also very into the universe at the moment because I'm reading Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And I've got to the point in the book where they've asked the machine, I've forgotten the name of the machine, but it's the all-foreseeing machine, what the answer to everything is. And he said 42.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah. 42, yeah.
I love that book because actually, so it's a comedy book. But what it really is a philosophy book disguised as a comedy book. There's a lot of life learnings there, which I think are comedy. Now, sorry, back to Results Gym. So Results Gym back in the day was Graham Park.
Yes, my first coach, yeah.
What was so amazing about Graham Park back in the day then? Because I think he kind of inspired you to go from rugby to weights.
Always kind of knew, so I started training when I was 16 and then I knew rugby was going nowhere in terms of I was never going to play for Scotland or anything like that. So I was like, right, I need to channel this hobby into something and make it have some sort of goal to make it worthwhile. So I was like, well, I've been watching bodybuilders the past 2 years, how to train, how to eat, so on and so forth. So I'll do a bodybuilding show when I think it was like 19, 20, I decided to do it.
When you say, watching bodybuilders, like in the gym or?
Just on YouTube and stuff. Yeah, because that was my next point. Is that in Aberdeen at the time there wasn't many people like bodybuilding. That was 2008. So was that 15 years ago? Even 15 years ago, the bodybuilding scene in Scotland was very, very, very small and very, very cliquey. So yeah, it was just kind of reserved to YouTube from that point.
Yep.
And then I basically searched in Google. I was like, I knew of Graham Parks. A lot of the grammar boys trained in Results, done like weightlifting on a Saturday morning and stuff like that. So I knew of Graham Park, and I just basically typed into Google like Aberdeen's best bodybuilder, and he came up first.
Right.
So like, cool, I'm going to reach out to him. And then he kind of...
Were you training yourself at that point?
Yeah.
You're lifting weights?
Yeah, just learning.
At the JJB gym?
Yeah, just trial and error. What sort of stuff I saw on YouTube and stuff. And yeah, I spoke to Graham, and I was like, I want to do this. And he wrote out the pros and cons for me there and then, because he'd been in the game so long. He was like, look, I'm just going to lay out, here's what to do, what not to do, here's what you'll expect, here's what's shit, here's what's good, so on and so forth. And I was like, cool, sounds all right to me. Stepped on stage.
Should become a manuscript for all first timers. It probably still applies now.
It definitely still applies, 100%.
What were the kind of things that were in it? Can you remember?
He basically said to me, are you natural? And I said, at the time, I was like, yeah, I am. I was like, cool, you'll never win an untested federation then. I was like, wow, okay, cool.
Straight off the bat.
Straight off the bat. That's one of the first things he ever said to me. I was like, I like this guy. I like people who are blunt. I love people who are just say as it is. I don't care if you hurt my feelings, just say as it is.
Right.
I think think Scottish people and British people tend to stay away from people like that. They find them just too much.
Particularly British. I think Scottish can be a bit more direct.
Maybe, yeah.
Whereas the Dutch, for example,
just tell how it is.
Straight in.
I worked with a few guys at Subsea 7 who are Dutch, and they were like that. Just like, don't care how your feelings are. Here's what you need to do, so on and so forth. So anyway, I kind of warmed to Graham very, very quickly. Done my first show, and I remember I walked up the stairs backstage.
Sorry, natural show.
No. So I decided to start using anabolics in my first prep.
Got it. What was the cycle?
I've been asked that a few times. I can't quite remember, but being under Graham's guidance, it would have been just maybe a little bit of testosterone. Definitely used Winstrol. I didn't use any fat burners that prep. So probably, I think it was just those two.
Right.
I honestly, hand on heart, I think it was just those two things.
Can you remember what it felt like doing your first cycle, like with the test, and notwithstanding what it was, but can you remember, like, were you looking in the mirror going, whoa, okay, like I'm...
So because that was the first time I'd ever gone to that level of body fat, I don't know if it was the drugs or it was my dieting that was causing the way I was looking. So it's hard to say that. The time that I noticed them working is the first off season that I'd done with them.
Okay.
So that's probably when I noticed, Jesus, like now I'm big.
You're blowing up.
Yeah. So that was the difference between the prep and then using them in off season.
So back to the show. You were walking up the stairs.
Stood on stage, and the pre-judging at NABA was done in the morning, and the finals were done at night. So the pre-judging is maybe about half full. I remember just standing there, and I was like, I fell in love instantly.
Really?
Like, instantly.
Wow.
I still remember that feeling to this day, and ever since then, just addicted to bodybuilding. Just everything about it. I said this to one of my friends the other day, like, it still fascinates me to this day. Every day, it's all I think about. Training, nutrition, anabolics to an extent. I don't go about thinking about anabolics all day. It's a bit weird, but everything, like we talked about, Phil Heath's mindset towards it.
Yeah.
It's the most unbelievably fascinating sport and lifestyle on the planet, in my opinion.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we've got plenty of time to talk about that. That really absolutely is, and we're going to unpack all of it. You know, I'm sure you've seen the Arnold Schwarzenegger documentary.
The most recent one, yeah.
I mean, it's fantastic.
There's a lot of stuff there I didn't even realise about him.
Spectacular.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing.
Kind of, I was going to say it's like a movie, but he is a walking movie. He is the movie. But he, in that documentary, and I'd recommend the listeners watch it. It's on Netflix. Talks about going on stage and how it feels and having all the eyes on you and doing his classic poses, and you can see why.
Oh yeah.
Because it must be the ultimate, like, adrenaline rush almost. You're in these tiny pants.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Fake tan. Yeah.
Oiled up, fake tan.
Yeah.
And everyone's looking at you and you're asking to do these poses. So I can see why there's a buzz.
Yeah.
And I mean, must have been easy for him to fall in love with it, particularly when he went to California, because all he did was lie in the sun.
Oh yeah.
Train.
I could totally see how you fall in love with that.
Yeah, right. That's like the ultimate lifestyle.
Yeah.
So you did your first show. How did you get on in your first show?
Came second, and 4 weeks later I'd done another Scottish show, another different federation, and came first in that one, beating the guy who beat me.
Nice.
4 weeks prior. So
why did you beat him that time? Like what?
I was a little bit more conditioned. I think because what happens to the body, if you diet for too long, it starts to fade, starts to look tired. I think that kind of happened to him, whereas I got better after those 4 weeks. So that's just how it kind of played out. So
there's a limit to how long you can diet for, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Because one person who I came up with, he described bodybuilding prep as controlled starvation. Like, eventually, if you keep going, you will die. Like, that's essentially starvation.
Even though you've got lots of muscle?
Yeah, it's controlled starvation. Like, you will eventually strip away that muscle if you diet for enough time.
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, so it's controlled starvation. So the body does eventually give up. It does eventually look worse.
Yeah.
Again, we go back to the fascination. It's an art. Dieting for a bodybuilding show isn't just do this cardio, eat that broccoli, take these drugs. That is like maybe the surface. There's an art to standing on stage.
So you have 15 years of experience now in training, but also you've coached a lot of people who've won competitions. And have any of your clients got a pro card?
Yeah, I've got a IFBB pro card through Karen Gibson. She won figure in 2019, British. I've got clients who've got pro cards in other federations as well.
So we could probably talk for days about the art, but can you try and distill the essence of 15 years creating champions and being a champion yourself in terms of the art of a prep?
I've only been prepping people since, for a living, since 2017. So still a good bit of time.
Good experience.
But
the results show.
Yeah. As a whole though, it's kind of like, you have everything dialed to a T. Like the minutes you're sleeping, the grams of salt you're eating, the grams of food you're eating, everything on the anabolic side. Training is beyond meticulous. I think most competitors will tell you this. If you do like a 16-week prep, those last 8 weeks, because you're so dialed in and focused, you don't really remember much of it. You remember the start of that 8 weeks, and then next thing you know, you're at the show. You're just so dialed in and in tune that everything is just clockwork. There's no thought. There's very little thinking involved. From a competitor side of you, a coach side of you, slightly different, but it is monotonous. But yeah, when you're dialed in that much, and that's why a lot of people struggle after they've done the show, because they can't take themselves out of that.
That's interesting.
That mindset. It's you are very much locked in. I've had clients, and myself obviously, where it's a month after the show and you're struggling to kind of get back to normality just because you've had just this dialed in focus for that amount of time. Obviously, you throw starvation into that equation as well, and it does compound and seems like a lot bigger.
Do you feel depressed after a show? In that sort of interlude period?
So we get what's called the post-show blues. That's very common. So people no longer have this goal anymore.
Right.
So that's why it's quite important to kind of set new goals going forward.
Yep.
So honestly, there will be some people, guys and girls, who stand off stage, they'll look at their calendar for the next year and they'll already have picked a show. The moment they get off stage, like that night as they're sitting having their cheat meal at night.
Blowout.
Their blowout, yeah. They'll be sitting there planning their next show.
Not recommended for gut health, but
yeah, I know, yeah. Speaking of which, moves us to our next topic. They'll be legit planning their next show. So that's how bodybuilding works and how it should work post show. But depression, maybe not so much depression, but definitely post show blues is definitely a real thing. And
are the principles of the prep the same for everyone, or does it depend on if they're male or female, if they're like newly into it or advanced, if they're on gear, not on gear? Like, how does it change or differ?
So, kind of a blanket statement, I would say females have to do more than men in terms of suffering. Less muscle mass, less capability to lose body fat as efficiently.
Right.
So in that aspect, yes, there are some women who do have an easy time of it, and there are some men who really have to suffer to get remotely in shape.
And just for the listener, because remember, this is not it's not a bodybuilding podcast. So when you say in shape, can you try and contextualize it? Because typically, I think the classic listener to Inside Matters would see someone at 15% body fat, 12% body fat, and go, "Oh, that's athletic physique.
Yeah.
They look amazing."
Yeah.
But you're talking about something very different, aren't you?
Talking about single-digit body fat levels, unhealthy body fat levels. You got to remember though, it's only for 10 minutes on stage on maybe 1 or 2 days a year. So it's not healthy, but it's not unhealthy. You see what I mean? But yeah, those levels of body fat are kind of dangerously low. They should be anyway. And certain classes have different criteria, but let's just talk bodybuilding. You're going to body fat levels that are sub 10. Things start breaking down, like your hair quality, your skin quality, things like that. Sleep quality is out the window for most people.
What happens to sleep?
Insomnia for a lot of people.
Is that right?
I've had, so my worst year insomnia was probably 2018, and I was maybe going to bed at say 10:30, not tired at all, and then getting up at 1 o'clock in the morning, I'd just sit on my laptop and do work.
No way.
Oh yeah, wide awake.
How do you recover from the training if you?
Exactly. So then the physique starts to suffer.
Yeah, and your mind, your mental health.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's luckily in 2019 I kind of figured out how to get myself to sleep. So monitoring caffeine intake.
Yep.
There are certain anabolics and fat burners that we take that do kind of stimulate the adrenal gland, and we can monitor things that way. In 2021, started using things like magnesium threonate, theanine, things like that to get to sleep easier naturally. And then
melatonin.
Usually we have melatonin as well in the last prep as well. So
that help?
Massively, yeah. But I found myself, when I came off melatonin, I struggled to get to sleep after that.
That's interesting.
For about a month. So
did you take an American dose, which is like 10 milligrams?
10 milligrams. Yeah. That is... that's coma material.
That's serious stuff.
Yeah. Like 10 minutes after taking that, you can feel it.
Because the guidelines, well, there's no guidelines per se, but 0.5 G, so 500 micrograms, would be like a classical starting dose, and then 1 to 3 grams would be like a bigger dose.
Yeah. So one of my clients,
10 grams is
ridiculous,
very high. But actually, there's some evidence that suggests that very, very high dose of melatonin may be beneficial for your immune system. It crosses.
I've read a few papers on that.
Blood-brain barrier.
Yeah.
They've, in animal models, correlated the use of melatonin with less neurodegenerative type pictures. So
because my client, she works in a diabetics ward, but a lot of diabetics are quite elderly, and a few of them have dementia, so they have to give dementia patients. And she was like, "We give dementia patients 2. We're taking 10." And I was like, "Oh, that is actually quite a lot." I never thought of it that way, but
it's one of these ones where, I mean, you're a very big guy, but for this it doesn't matter because it's acting exclusively in the brain, and it's not metabolized in the classical way that, you know, something that you eat might be. So that's kind of interesting. It's like psilocybin, the active component of magic mushrooms. Again, we're going off piece now, but it's a very hot area of interest for me. It doesn't matter how big your body is. You know, the dose of psilocybin is the dose of psilocybin. So don't be thinking, oh, well, my friends just had 1 gram or whatever, I'm going to have 3 or 5. No.
Please don't.
Please stay safe. Well, no one's ever died of magic mushroom overdose. They just... Well, we talked about different universes. I mean, if you're doing a hero dose, 12 grams, 10 grams, you will go into a different universe.
So hard. I've never done it myself.
Some people say that if you take enough, the mushrooms show you how the world and the universe started.
Yeah, I'd love to see that.
Yeah, that would.
Speaking of our first topic,
that would be pretty cool.
My fear of doing it is I see this like light or power, and it just says to me,
"Stop bodybuilding."
You do know bodybuilding's a lot of rubbish, right? You do know that it's like the most pointless hobby to have. I'm just gonna look at him and go, the guiding light. Exactly. That's why I'm a bit wary about doing it.
On the flip, your psilocybin-induced spiritual awakening connection with God could be like Z's. God could be jacked up.
Like, next time you look good.
God could be like, mate, you are...
You never know.
You're on the right track.
I don't know if I want to take that risk though, because like I've obviously done cannabis in my time as well. I use cannabis oil for sleep purposes as well.
CBD or the full
cannabis oil?
The full deal.
The full deal.
The THC as well.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So how does that make you feel?
High as a kite, and then there was so
and hungry.
I don't get munchies from it. So
interesting.
Yeah, so that wasn't too bad. But I remember one morning doing my cardio, and I must have still been high. I didn't realize it when I got up. And I remember just like walking down the street, just felt like I was floating in the same spot. And I was like, oh, I'm still high as a kite.
That is comedy.
So I was taking that for a wee while to try and get to sleep. I try and stay away from that because that's just a trip.
Because the medically approved uses of cannabis are cachexia, which is like a very serious complication of cancer where you essentially just wither away and your appetite goes. So it's for that. And then the other one I think is people who have AIDS, which is very rare now because of the antiretroviral medication so good. It sort of, again, stimulates appetite. And also Anavar, I think, was used, which is an anabolic. So that's interesting. So your sleep routine now includes cannabis oil, or you've...
No. I would only use that when I'm really suffering, really struggling to sleep and stuff like that. Just going back to your point about
please.
THC and cannabis oil. Have you looked into like Parkinson's treatment with that?
Yeah. Yep.
So my dad's got
epilepsy, right? In children. So
yeah.
So children who've got epilepsy, which is like, you know, various different neurological states which can result in different types of seizures. My understanding is cannabis oil is used for children who are suffering, and it reduces the frequency and the severity of the seizures. Kind of magic.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to access on the NHS. So you can get private prescriptions of unlicensed forms of cannabis
Right.
for a cost, and that market's increasing and increasing and increasing. And I feel, my gut tells me that it will become legal in this country eventually.
Yeah, I think we're within touching distance now.
It seems like the sensible thing to do.
Yeah, so my dad's got quite severe Parkinson's. He's had Parkinson's for 13 years now, and he won't go near it. I've suggested
You've encouraged him?
Oh, of course, yeah. I've encouraged him. I've shown him countless videos, documentaries, things like that. But I think my dad is just he's very by the book and just wants to listen to what the doctors say.
Okay.
The doctors say, his particular doctor's like, oh, no, that'll interfere with all your medication and things like that. But some of his medication, for instance, like the medication to stop the tremors and stuff, they freeze the body.
Yeah.
So he can't speak for 3 hours a day.
Oh.
He just sits there like a statue, can't speak. And
It must be hard to watch.
yeah, it's I always say to my girlfriend, I'm like, you've never actually met my dad, because that's not him.
Yeah.
And that's the drugs, it's the Parkinson's itself, obviously. And I have suggested it to him, but because it's like semi-illegal here, he's very wary of it. So,
It's interesting that his doctor says absolutely no.
yeah, it is an absolute no. Yeah.
Because I'm out of the medical profession, as you know, so I can speak a little bit more freely on these things. For me, I think there's what is the risk and what's the benefit?
Yeah.
And it's hard to truly quantify what the risk is until you actually do it.
Mm-hmm.
But a little bit of THC, a little bit of cannabis oil, CBD, THC, just to try for a couple of weeks.
Yeah. What's the harm?
I mean, that seems like quite a safe and sensible thing to do if you start with a low dose.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
maybe you can't guarantee its purity, but I'm sure underground sources are pretty good.
Still
now,
gonna be pretty good,
right?
yeah.
Because so many people use it, they have
Yeah.
to be good. Otherwise, people go elsewhere.
Like, I don't know about your parents, but I'm assuming they're all the other way. They will be the same generation. So stupid
Yeah,
question.
so my dad's 70,
Right. So a bit older than my dad.
a little bit older, and then my mum's roughly 10 years younger.
Right.
But I mean, personally, I mean, if I saw them suffering, I wouldn't hesitate to look at what can you do by the book and what's new and experimental and emerging. Because the last thing you want is to see someone you love suffering.
Yeah, of course.
Right?
Yeah.
And if there's something out there,
Yeah.
just because it's not legal now doesn't necessarily mean that it's not going to be legal in the future.
Exactly, yeah.
There's that risk benefit, I
Yeah,
suppose.
I have sat him down and spoke to my mum and all that as well, and it's very much, I'm just coming up against that.
Your mum in the same camp, she says, no, it's illegal.
She's never outright said what my dad said. She's kind of like, just let your dad decide.
Fair enough.
So you can only...
There's still
I'm not-
stigma, right? You know, it's a drug.
That's what I was about to say with regarding their age. I think there's still that generation. There's probably a little bit of stigma behind it. You know, so...
But it will change.
It will. And hopefully it doesn't change too late.
Yeah.
That's what I'm worried about. So...
What does he do for his microbiome? Serious question. Because some people think that the disease, Parkinson's I'm talking about now, starts in the gut, because people get gut symptoms 10 years before they get neurological symptoms in some cases. You know, they can get constipation, they can get diarrhea. Some people think that it starts as some sort of infection that travels through the vagus nerve, which is one of the cranial nerves, ones that come into your brain and CNS. And somehow this virus or whatever it is travels up and finds its way into the nervous system, and then it starts to have the effects. So there's some people that think if you change the microbiome through like a fecal microbiota transplant, then you might slow down, maybe arrest, maybe in some cases, but these are true believers now. I think you might be able to reverse symptoms.
Really?
Yeah, and I went on an amazing hike actually, and I'll shout out Walk Glencoe and Christian who does them, in January this year in a place called Carrure, which is the most remote train station in the UK.
Right.
You can get there from 2 hours from Glasgow, which is pretty cool. And there's 3 Munros near Carrure, Loch Carrure, and there's also a hostel there. There's a hotel there, which is apparently very nice in summer. And there's a billionaire's mansion.
Oh, right, okay.
It's pretty cool. It's this insane glass house, which is on the edge of the loch. I actually tried to get in. Is that illegal? I tried to look.
I look at it.
I tried to snoop. Now, to bring us back to the story, there was someone on that trip called Patrick. He had an international career in oil and gas. He was a runner, athlete, developed Parkinson's, and also had I think quite a bad fall as a result of it, and had an injury which made it even harder. Now, this guy, fair play to him, he made it up the Munros with unable to move one of his arms, and he was like shuffling alongside the mountain. I was really impressed. Didn't complain once. They had just started a probiotic trial for his Parkinson's through a university. So it's happening.
Yeah.
There's microbiome research happening with people with Parkinson's disease. So it'd be interesting to hear.
Which university was that?
Can't remember. I'll have a look and follow up post show. And if anyone's interested in the details, just email James at insidematters.health. So I'll follow up with you on that.
Yeah, 100%.
I personally, if someone I knew had Parkinson's and it was progressing, I think I'd be looking at the diet, going, what are we doing here to maximize diversity? Are we having enough fiber every day? Are we eating whole, real, minimally processed foods? All the basics. Then I would start to consider the probiotics, prebiotics, maybe even the whole community restoration through FMT.
Yeah.
Because why not? I mean, is it going to make it worse? Probably not.
No.
And it, well, you know now, your dad's had it for how long, sorry?
13 years diagnosed, yeah.
It's getting worse? Or
Yeah, and it started with a tremor, and
Did you notice it? Like,
yeah, well, so my dad's on blood thinning drugs because he had a heart attack in 2010, and then he was put on these blood thinning drugs, and then the tremor came off the back of that. So doctors originally thought it was a side effect.
Thought it was a medication.
Yeah, and then he then got tested for Parkinson's, and they were like, I think we've got Parkinson's.
Shoot,
so
man.
it's been the past 3-4 years have been probably where it's moved quite quickly. So he done a trial thing at the Elizabeth. I think it was. I've seen it on BBC documentary. It was they insert stuff into your is it into your brain or yeah. So
he was doing that.
No, he didn't qualify for it. I know, so that's a shame.
Because apparently the results were pretty good.
Yeah, I saw a video of it. My girlfriend sent me a video of it. So unfortunately, he was declined for that. But
sugar man,
I'm sure that
sounds like he's been in the wars.
Big time. Yeah, it's mad how. So basically, I don't know if my dad will watch this, but his older brother smokes 40 a day, obese, never looked after himself.
No issues
at all, not one. And my dad, who's played sport, played rugby, been a very active man his whole life, not a heavy drinker, looks after his diet. Probably not the best diet in the world, but he's had everything under the sun.
He's had bad luck.
Yeah, so sometimes it's just the way
it's
the world
hard,
works,
that isn't it?
Yeah,
you see these videos of people who are 100 and they say, "What's the secret?" and they say, "Whiskey every night and a cigarette."
Facts.
It's like, well, no, you probably just luck of the draw. What's much better is to watch these Blue Zone documentaries.
Yeah.
And there's recurring themes, that sense of community, working, don't stop working, move every day, and back to the diet, minimally processed, real foods.
Yep.
Is it a food that's been made by man or has it been made by God? I.e., can you pull it out of the ground?
Yeah.
Or is it's something that doesn't look like...
Yeah, it's a single sourced.
Exactly, yeah. That's the key. Now, back to bodybuilding.
Whoa, that was segueing off that one.
Back to bodybuilding. So, talk about where you're at now. You had an injury recently since the last time you came on. Has that changed your approach to training in any way? Because last time you came on, it was like Dorian Yates.
Yeah.
Smash it out every single session. There's videos of you online with that crazy guy. I forgot his name. Crazy Chris, yeah. and
again.
I mean, it is quite a spectacle. Watching you guys train.
Yeah.
Because it's quite a violent, aggressive, punishing experience.
Yeah.
And anyone who's been trained by you knows how it feels, because you're sort of 10 minutes in and you're like, how am I going to finish this session? Like, I can't move. Like, I can't move my legs. I can't move my arms. Can't move my shoulders. But you get through it eventually.
Yeah.
So what's changed?
So legs wise, that's exactly the same. That's that punishing, horrible stuff that I put you through a few times.
Yep.
That's still in play. I feel like I need to...
I come back though. I do come back. It's not a one and done.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I'll give you that. I need to keep that in play for as long as I can. When my legs start showing signs of, right, you need to try to do something else, I will. But I'm seeing progress just off the back of what we're doing now. And that's still very much the one set to failure, maybe some intensifiers type work. For chest and shoulder work, I've had to kind of go back to the drawing board a wee bit with that.
How come? Because of the injury?
Yeah, so basically, I could go back to what I was doing before, like single sets, all-out failure with presses and things like that. But I've kind of gone down the route of a little bit more volume,
right?
A little bit more volume work, stuff that I would have considered in the past to be a bit too easy. But since starting that in February was when I started training again after the operation, I've seen big improvements with my physique, just rounder, fuller.
Really?
Yeah, kind of a more, what I picture to be like a perfect physique for me is starting to kind of evolve now. And that's kind of what I see in the mirror now. So rounder shoulders, fuller through the pec, fuller through the arms, back has that kind of turtle shell kind of look to it. Whereas before I felt I was adding tissue, but we come back to the kind of like what the average person sees as what a bodybuilder sees. So when I look at certain physiques, they've got like hard, dense, rough tissue. And then you look at someone else who's got like round, separated tissue. It's trying to, most people either have one or the other, and it's tried to like mold the two of them into one. So people always say like Dorian Yates is one of the best Mr. Olympians of all time. If he had changed his training and maybe gone down a route where he was trying to just make the muscle fuller and rounder, how many would have continued to win from that point? And how many injuries would he have avoided from that point?
So for the listener, Dorian Yates, a UK-based bodybuilder, he does a lot of magic mushrooms now, actually, doesn't he?
He's very into that
kind of stuff. Yeah. So what was his approach and what made him successful?
So his approach, training, what he's known for in the latter half of his career, between probably 1993 to 1997, was a style of training where you take an exercise to complete all-out failure, where the muscle can literally do no more. You then
even like a body weight type thing, like total failure,
complete and utter failure. Yeah,
and describe that for the listener, because most people will go until they can't do one more, but
until it hurts. Yeah,
but it's actually much more than that, isn't it?
Yeah. So if you're doing a bench press or a squat, for example, when you start to hurt and when you start to feel a bit of pain, you've probably got 4 or 5 reps left, whereas people think that's the end. So you're taking it to that point. You're taking it to the point where the muscle can literally not move a single inch. You've then got a training partner to give you a forced rep. So that's a rep where they're doing a little bit of the work. Yeah. And then you're going into an intensifier. So there's a drop set where you're dropping the weight off, doing as many reps as possible, so on and so forth. So very intense, short workouts. Yep. That's kind of what he pioneered in the
How long were his workouts?
He says between 45 minutes and an hour for the bulk of the work. Now, you can add on another half an hour for like warm-ups and stuff like that on top of that. But yeah, 45 minutes to an hour, which many people still, when I get people to come in and I do this kind of work with them, they're like, there's no way you can get that amount of work done in 5 sets. Trust me, you can. You can break down muscle tissue very easily is the wrong word, but fast. Yeah.
With the right kind of approach.
With the right kind of approach. It's always a nice experience for me as a trainer to put someone through that for the first time.
Right. Yeah. It sucks.
Yeah. I love it.
So what happened to him then afterwards? He just got injured, or?
A lot of injuries were plaguing him, and I think he just decided to walk away after 1997, and then Ronnie Coleman came in and started that era in 1998. I think a lot of people will potentially know who Ronnie Coleman is. But Dorian Yates, I think he had a bicep tear, lat tear, tricep tear, supraspinatus tear. He was just falling to bits towards the end, so I think he just called it a day. So,
how did Ronnie Coleman's training differ, or was it the same as Dorian, like heavy?
No, complete polar opposite. So Ronnie Coleman was known for training at certain points through his career twice a day for 6 days a week, and then that means you do a body part twice a week.
Wow.
Yeah, so ridiculous amount of volume, ridiculous amount of weight. I mean, if you go on YouTube, you'll see videos of him squatting 800 pounds. That's powerlifting numbers. That's not bodybuilding numbers. Yeah. Deadlifting close to 400k. Ridiculous numbers. I very much think he was a genetic outlier. I don't think we'll ever see a physique like that ever again. Even that guy you just showed me, like, he still doesn't touch Ronnie Coleman.
Really?
Structure-wise, no.
Right. So what makes Ronnie Coleman such an outlier? And it's the size, but also the shape.
The size, the shape, the condition he gets in, everything. The thinness of this, every aspect of the human physique at that Olympia level comes into play. So how thin your skin is, how well you can tolerate dehydration, how well you can tolerate fat loss, how well your body deals with cortisol. All these things come into play at that level. It's like a 100-meter sprinter trying to take off 0.1 of a second off his sprint. That's a lot in Olympic level sprinting. It's the same as bodybuilding. Like, it's these tiny, tiny details. You've got coaches, amateur coaches do it as well. Sorry, amateur level coaches. You've got coaches looking at physiques every half an hour, and they're spotting changes and going, right, now we need an extra this amount of carbs, that amount of fat, let's put a little more sodium in here, let's put a little bit more water here. It is that precise at that level.
And is there a playbook for that, or is it just experience?
It's all experience.
That's fascinating.
It's all done by the eye.
That's fascinating.
If you were to ask the top 5 coaches in the world, like, write down how you do that, he's like, I can't, because then I'd have a different book for every single guy I train. Everyone's different.
Really?
Everyone's different. There's not one body on this planet that's the same. At that level, it's very easy to have different approaches. But when you're coaching guys and girls who are maybe Scottish regional level, not quite got a lot of development muscle, you can run a similar kind of playbook for most people. Right. It's when you start taking the physique to that extreme level, that's when these tiny wee things make all the difference.
So at the top level, people are looking at them in their pants, so to speak, every 20 minutes, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And they're going to go, right, a tiny bit more salt.
Yeah. A wee bit more water
Can
here.
you see the changes in real time? Like at that level? Because they're so lean and so big?
Yep. So you're that lean that you can spot an extra gram of sodium in the body, an extra half liter in the body.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's that, again, we go back to, it's fascinating.
It is really
absolutely fascinating. That eye.
It's art.
It's art.
Well, it's art, but there's a science to it. There has to be
there is science to it. Oh, yeah, of course.
But it's too complicated at the moment. Yeah, because one of the things I laugh about, and have laughed about for years, is that quote unquote bro science is actually legit.
Yeah, that's that eye.
It's super legit. But I'll give you a couple of examples. It's like, I sent you something recently about partial reps. And so someone like Branch Warren, who's a professional bodybuilder, not anymore, I think he's practicing now, would do tons of these partial reps where they wouldn't do the full range of motion. They would just load up the bottom or the top and just do rep. And people would be like, no, that's suboptimal, which is kind of comedy considering how big someone like Branch is. That's suboptimal. No use. You need the full range of motion. But then Ronnie Coleman also did a lot of partial reps, not fully locking out, everything like that. So the bro side of things would, with 50 years or whatever many years of collective bodybuilding experience, would say, no, this is what you need to do. The science guys who've probably never done a show in their life for the most part, who are in these gyms, who sort of tapes and all that kind of stuff, say, no, you need to do full range of motion. Yeah. Long story short, they did a number of studies recently, and like 4 out of the 5 studies said, don't quote me on that, but 4 out of 5 studies said, actually partial reps, you get bigger.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's one example.
Yeah.
Think about the classic bodybuilding diet. This is one I find comedy. It's lean meat sources, low GI carbohydrates that have been minimally processed, vegetables. That's like the classic sweet, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then you've got your if it fits your macros guys who are like, nah, just have McDonald's and Haribo to meet your macros. And I'm saying that with quite a condescending voice as someone who actually did that myself. So I'm sort of laughing at my past self. And so it's so obvious to me now with all the microbiome and gut health experience that I have, that obviously the classic clean diet is going to be better for you than the other one.
100%.
So it's better for your insides, which means that you're going to look better as well, right?
Yeah.
Now we're kind of coming away from different macros. No one's doing that Haribo stuff anymore because we're thinking about the insides and why it's important. Again, bro science was much, much further ahead.
Yeah.
To give you a more recent example, TRT. So professional bodybuilders for many, many years do these big cycles when they're professional, and then they go and become, I don't know, whatever it is when they retire. They stay on testosterone, right? Because they feel better. Yeah. How many years have pros been doing that? Forever. Now you've got CEOs doing TRT. Why is that? Because they feel better. Yeah. It's just the same.
Yeah.
So people should actually not discredit and discount the quote unquote bro science, because it probably just is science. We don't need to be on this high horse around
empirical science. You're watching the results unfold in front of you.
Exactly.
That's where it's like, you would. I just lost my train of thought there. Brilliant.
Empirical science.
Yeah.
Watching somebody who is at a show getting prepped, modulate this, modulate that, There will be a true science to that.
Yeah.
And for your clients that you look at and train on a day-to-day basis,
Mm-hmm.
how many months of watching them, getting to know them, training with them does it take before you really know what you tweak and what you don't tweak and so on and so on?
Within a contest prep, if you're talking about a 20-week prep, you can probably start figuring out what does and doesn't work within the latter half of the prep. So
basically half the year you're prepping.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. So you could look at a body. Usually it's kind of, if we're talking about guys and girls who just starting, just say their first or second show, you'll do high carb days and then you'll see the response as to how they respond to the carbs. Do they look fuller in the morning? Do they look, how dry are they in first thing in the morning? At what point post high day is the best physique? So for instance, I'll take an example of my last client who competed, Scott. So his best look was 2 days after we'd done a high carb day that consisted of, say, 600 grams of carbs. So I know that in order to have him look a particular way for the show, we manipulate the days leading up to that off the back of that high day, which we experimented was roughly about 600 grams of carbs to fill out his physique.
Just out of interest, what are the sources of the carbohydrates?
Scott would have been oats,
rice, potatoes.
No potatoes. I think it's oats and rice. I think
Wow.
at the end, the end of the diet. It is a lot more varied in the off season, but on a contest prep, I try and limit how many single source variables I have in my diet so that everything is very as predictable as humanly possible.
So you mentioned before we came in here that you're going to do another prep in January.
Mm-hmm.
Talk the listener through how that prep is going to evolve over the time period and how rigid is the diet.
Cool. So it's actually already started. So
You started to prep already before Christmas?
Technically.
What about Christmas?
I'll celebrate Christmas, don't worry.
All right, good.
No, it's I've pulled 200 calories worth of
imagine having
fat
to
in my
cook
diet.
Christmas dinner for you. People are sweating.
I'm going to be very
Sweet.
controversial and say I don't really enjoy Christmas dinner. To be
Really?
honest. Yeah, it's not that big a deal for me.
But you can go
Never
off.
has been.
You can go off piece. You don't necessarily need the turkey. You can have lots of other things like beef Wellington, salmon Wellington.
What did we have last? What did we have last year? We had an Italian last. We were in New York last year, so we went to Carmine's in Times Square. Have you been there?
Yeah, I've not been there, but I've heard of it.
Oh,
yeah.
it's phenomenal.
Wow.
We went there for Christmas Day last year, and then the year before that we were in STK in Dubai. So we definitely don't follow the
amazing
the Christmas traditional stuff. But I lost my train of thought.
New York at Christmas.
Oh, it's the best time to go because it's dead.
Yeah,
it's dead.
Yeah.
Like Times Square, I counted. It was like 10 people in Times Square.
Really?
It was. It's the best time to go see the city.
Times Square is not somewhere I would choose to go to. It's too busy and crazy.
Yeah,
but at Christmas it must be better.
Yeah, there was no one there. It was brilliant. So
back to your prep.
That's the question.
Back to prep.
So I've taken 200 calories worth of fat out, and I've added in 10 minutes of cardio per day, except on my leg day. So that's kind of how.
Just 10 minutes.
Just 10 minutes. No, 30 minutes in total.
Okay.
So what that'll do is that will take off that kind of residual weight. So if I started at, say, this prep at 292, I'll just kind of maybe go down to, I don't know.
292 pounds.
Yeah.
So it's 130 kilograms roughly, yeah.
Down to just say 285 by New Year. So I've already shifted a nice bit of weight, half a stone off by Christmas and New Year. And then 1st of January, kind of lock in, talk about that mindset again, like kind of locking into the diet, knowing that I've got this 6-month thing that I'm going to be doing.
When is the show?
The regional, so in the federation I compete in, you have to do a regional in order to go and do a professional qualifier.
Yes.
So the regional Scottish hasn't been announced yet, but it'll probably be around April time because that's when the Scottish season is. So I'll do that in April, and then there's a professional qualifier in June, the first weekend of June, that I'm going to do, assuming it's the same weekend. I'm going to do that one. So, and then a professional qualifier means that if you win the overall at that, you'll become a professional in the professional league. And then you can go from there, it's like the road up to the Mr. Olympia, which is the biggest competition in the world.
Which is where you want to be.
Yeah.
Do you know who you're up against? You can see who's entered, or
you can scour Instagram and stuff like that if you really wanted to, but I've not done that. I think I'd done that when I was preparing for my first shows. Now I'm kind of like, I don't care. It's
just do your own thing.
Yeah, you can't change anyone's performance in the day.
You can only change yours.
You can only change yours. So that's the difference with bodybuilding.
Do you not get a bit nervous because like you're doing from January for 6 months prep and you're only on stage for 10 minutes? It's like, what happens if you're sick 3 days before, does that kind of anxiety build into your brain?
No, there's no point in thinking like that.
That's good.
Yeah, there's no point in thinking like, if what happens, you have to take any kind of thing or roadblock and just kind of work your way around it as much as you possibly can, unless it's like traumatic, like a major tear or something like that.
Can you gain any muscle in your prep, or is it more about maintaining what you've built in the off season?
You can. What I notice is the guys who aren't very adherent during an off season, they are the guys who grow the most when they start prep, because now you've got that regimented system coming into play. Their sleep is perfect, training's perfect, eating's perfect, and then like, oh, I'm growing into the show is the term. I absolutely hate that term. You might grow a little bit. I'm not saying you won't.
Right.
But the guys who talk about, oh yeah, I gained 10 pounds in my first 4 or 5 weeks of my prep, I was like, well, you obviously weren't doing what you should have been doing in the off season. If that was the case, you should be 50 pounds up from your off season then, but they're not. So what were you doing in your off season that was very, very wrong.
Interesting.
I always take a pinch of salt when people say that. So, are
you comfortable talking about the steroid side of things?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So can you talk about what you do on an annual basis, and how does that change when you're in season, off season? And
So if we talk about an off season phase, so there's many names for it now. I think people get offended by the name off season because it has off in it. So you're not officially off. Like, all right, can we just act like adults here? Like, so
we get very upset about a lot of things these days.
Yeah,
don't we? And it's like
it now has to be called improvement season or off season. Like it's been called off season since the 1950s. Just
no
call
one
it
cared
off season.
then.
No one cared. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anyway, so an off season for me, I'll probably go up to. I'll just tell you what I did last time. I've done about 900 milligram of testosterone. Don't advocate for this, by the way.
That's okay.
800 milligram of primobolan.
None of this is medical advice.
No,
it's just
none.
It's just really interesting. Yeah.
None. And 200 milligram of MPP, growth hormone.
What's MPP? Is a peptide?
It is nandrolone, fast-acting nandrolone.
Okay.
Growth hormone, 6 IU a day. Insulin, 2 different types of insulin. So Humalog, 10 IU.
Wow.
Post-workout. Lantus, which is a long-acting insulin, 30 IU per day. And then metformin.
Really?
Yeah.
That's an interesting one, because that could kill some of the hypertrophy. I send you that research.
I know that research. I haven't seen it in
any of your
bodybuilding
practice.
Population. No, it's...
Why did the bodybuilding population take metformin?
For insulin sensitivity. And there are other health benefits surrounding metformin as well.
There absolutely are, yeah.
But that's number one. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
So you're taking insulin and metformin to improve the sensitivity of insulin. Wow.
So how effective my body partitions nutrients and things like that.
Wow. Okay.
And then telmisartan it's a blood pressure medication, but we take it as a preventative measure to protect the kidneys and things like that.
Wow.
So that is my peaks, quote unquote, stack in an off season. And then throughout the year,
does it sort of gradually build up, or do you just start with that?
Yes. Yeah. So I work off what's called, right now, a lot of the British scene are using what's called the black models. So a guy called Victor Black, he's the one that kind of pioneered that. So working off the back of that, and where you periodically add, you scale up your cycle on scalable anabolics. So for instance, like I think many people know what Trenbolone is. It's got this kind of horrendous social media following to it. Trenbolone's not scalable. So for instance, if you take Trenbolone past a certain point, you're going to see side effects at quite a moderate dose compared to where you can take testosterone and primobolan and Mastron. So many people use the black models in the UK.
This is some person who just, when you say a model, it's like you can mix this with this, or you can stack this with this.
Yeah, kind of.
This is how you build it up.
It comes from scientific. It's scientific backing. It's not empirical. That is from Victor Black. Will say, here is this study that was done on testosterone in 1960, whatever, and here's the application for it, and so on and so forth. So,
so Victor Black, is he a bodybuilder as well? Or?
Yeah, I don't know if he's quite old now, but
that's interesting.
It's very comical watching him on Instagram, because he upsets a lot of people. Believe it or not, in the bodybuilding community, people get very upset when you tell them what they're doing is wrong. And it does a very good job of that. So he is a bit of a character, maybe not someone that I'd like to speak to on a daily basis, but sometimes I don't like his approach to the way
communicates.
Probably does attack people sometimes.
Right.
But he says he's doing it to
For
try
safety.
and educate.
For safety.
He's like, look, here is a model. Anabolic use is not 100% safe.
For sure.
So here is a model we can use to ensure that we all do stay as safe as humanly possible. There's your model. And it may not include something that people have been doing for years,
right?
What the old school guys were doing. So even in my short time doing this between when I started in 2008, I was always using anabolics back then, but my short time in the industry, things have massively changed across performance enhancing drugs, training, nutrition. It has changed quite a bit in
For
that.
the better? Or it's more extreme?
It's less extreme when it comes to training.
You think so?
Yeah, I think people are far too hung up on
recovery.
What is optimal?
Recovery, yeah.
Yeah. What is optimal? Not doing too much here, not doing too much there. It's like the human body can tolerate way more than what you're doing to it.
Yeah.
Trust me.
Yeah.
Like if we've got people who can survive concentration camps and starvation and things like that, trust me, your body can definitely tolerate 4 sessions a week.
For sure.
And doing a drop set maybe now and again. It's there's far too much, and it's trickled down to the younger lifter between 16 and 21. You've got guys who in their peak years, that's when to grow. Get fat, lift tons of weight.
Yeah.
Trust me, you'll thank yourself when you're in your late 20s.
Yeah. Build the base.
Build the base. And many young guys are not doing that anymore because they're listening to the Mr. Optimal who's never done a show or the Mr. Optimal who weighs a $150 soaking wet.
Yeah.
That's the trend now, I feel.
Get under the bar.
In bodybuilding, yeah. Don't get me wrong, there are guys and girls who have seen this and don't want it to go that way. And there are more people, especially in Britain. I'd say the British are the hardest trainers in the world.
Really?
I spend time around the Americans, they don't train hard.
Really?
Don't train hard.
But the Americans have more pro bodybuilders, right?
Yeah, but I think it's a bigger population.
Genetic pool's bigger.
Genetics pool's bigger, more popular sport there as well.
It's really popular there, isn't it?
Very. I mean, it's probably still considered an American sport.
Interesting.
Yeah, so the Olympia, they play the national anthem. Which
Do they actually?
I don't agree with that at all.
Wow. You were there, weren't you, this year?
Yeah, I was at the Olympia this year. Considering the majority of the competitors in the Open aren't American. So why are you playing the national anthem?
That's fascinating.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, that's just a side thought.
So back to your cycle then. So why do you not take Trenbolone?
So Trenbolone has been shown to kind of do things like raise blood pressure, things like that. You don't feel very good on it. It stimulates the adrenal gland in ways other anabolics don't. Things that they differ person to person. For instance, I notice insomnia. Obviously, that comes off the back of the adrenal stimulation. I get stomach acid. This is one that a lot of people get, is they feel emotionless. Now that's a good thing.
Really?
Yeah. So that's a good thing with training. It's good to feel emotionless when you're training because you feel like a machine and you feel like superhuman, but it doesn't translate well to normal life when you've got a girlfriend or a partner where you don't show emotion, you don't get emotional at anything. It's called the relationship ender for a reason. So
is that what it's called?
Not officially, but
in the bodybuilding circles,
a lot of people say, like, "Oh, when I stepped on Trenbolone, that's
when things started."
It's not particularly. I think if there's any anabolic that I've seen that people have used and grown an almost intolerance to it, it's Trenbolone. So, like for instance, I'm not going to use Trenbolone ever again. I don't agree with it. The way it makes me feel impacts my sleep, so on and so forth. It's just not worth it to me.
Because on social media, it's got like a cult following.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's like
it's very strange.
Trend, eat clean, trend hard.
Yeah.
All that nonsense. So it's interesting
nonsense.
to hear that it's not actually that good. It's just
people think it's a wonder drug. It's definitely not. It's absolutely not. The wonder drug is testosterone.
So is it fair to
always will be.
We'll talk about test. So is it fair to say you're trying to take as much as practically possible a health-based approach, or is that not true? And it's okay to say it's not, by the way. You don't need to say it is just because we're on a health podcast. Like,
no, I know.
It's good to hear the extremes.
Yeah. So the extremes, are we considering health? 100% yes. Any top amateur, top professional, we are 100% considering our health when it comes to anabolic use.
And that means the method. Mm-hmm. It means blood work.
Seeing a cardiologist, calcium scores, health supplements, which we actually spend way more on that than we do on the actual anabolics itself.
That's interesting.
All these wee kind of things to monitor health. But what the top amateur and the top professional is doing is not healthy. It's not. But in order to push new levels, you have to push new levels of everything.
Yeah.
And that also includes performance-enhancing drugs. So do some guys have to take more? Yeah. Some guys get away with less? Absolutely. You tend to notice guys who, when they reach their physical peak in terms of size, you can back off a little bit because you've now got that size there,
right.
But you still need,
you hold it.
Yeah, but you still need a certain level of androgen to maintain that level of size. So it's constantly breaking these ceilings within reason. Now, we know that, for instance, through just trial and error over many years, that say 2 grams of testosterone a week is not going to yield better results than say 1 gram.
1 gram's the upper ceiling, is it?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So we know.
By the way,
there's roughly these ceilings.
That's still a lot.
That's a lot of testosterone.
That's a lot of testosterone.
That's a lot of testosterone.
How do you split up your dosing, particularly on the testosterone side? Is it all done on one day, or do you split it up over the week?
No, I split it across the week. Yeah. So I'll actually do much smaller shots Monday through Saturday. That's what I do.
Every day.
Every day.
Yeah. That seems, I mean, from my perspective, just thinking about the body, and specifically testosterone, it seems much more physiological to do it daily or 3 times a week than just all at once. Because it's not going to go, for the listener, if you have a Y and an X axis right in the middle of the graph and just go up in a straight line. There's going to be ups and downs.
Yeah, peaks and troughs. Yeah.
And peaks and troughs in the levels in the blood.
Yeah.
And is that trial and error? You've arrived at that routine, or have you always tried to split up?
I've always kind of tried to split up. Obviously, when I first started, I told you what I did when I first started, that you didn't have to split it up because it was such a low dose. It
was so little, yeah.
But when you do go up to those doses, you don't want to put a gram of testosterone in one day.
No.
So, yeah.
What do the top pros, do you have any insight into what the top pros do? Like the Mr. Olympia people, are they doing more different types of compounds, or is it just more
I think
of it?
Right, so I don't know any. I know a few pros personally. Do I know their usage? No. Can I make an educated guess and say that, knowing that there's no wonder drug, there's no secret drug?
Yeah.
There definitely isn't any secret drug.
It's all on the table.
It's all on the table. We all know what everyone takes in terms of what we can take. So
you're telling me that these videos on Instagram that say, drugs that doctors don't want you to know about, it's not true?
When it comes to performance enhancing ones, yes.
It's all been tried.
It's the performance enhancing, the anabolic side of things. Most of these were developed 60s, 70s, latest 80s. So they've been around for a very long time, longer than most bodybuilders have been alive.
And trialed in many different Olympics, including weightlifting, gymnastics, sprinting, distance.
Yep.
I mean, it's probably fair to say every professional sport, there's probably some level of doping and cheating.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously I'm in that world, the bodybuilding world is very open, obviously, as I have been here, about our usage. And that is, I think, a great thing about bodybuilding, is that we are very open about our usage. We can't hide it because it's pretty blatantly obvious that the top amateurs and the top professionals are on.
But there will be, let's just say you go to a medical appointment, there will sometimes be people who say, so are you taking anything? I mean, even though for me, because you're so big, it's very obvious, but the average person may just think you're drinking protein shakes and going to the gym quite a lot.
Nah, from my experience, I would say people are a little bit a bit switched on now. Okay. With myself, yeah.
I think that's a good thing. People are more on top of it.
Yeah, I'm very open about it. I always have been. There's no point in lying. It doesn't serve me. It doesn't serve the person I'm talking to. So
some people say things like, "Oh well, I would be that big if I took steroids."
No, you won't.
No.
The fact you've said that, I already know. I'll be right 99.9% of the time that you will not. I've said this to people before, like online when you get these wee kind of comments and trolls and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, I will pay for all your drugs. Like, give me your bank account details. I will pay for all your drugs. I guarantee you will not be my size doing just that. If you think that's the secret, do what I've done for 15 years.
Right.
Maybe.
Right.
Maybe you'll be where I am.
Does it take that long to build the foundations and to build the density and?
For an open bodybuilder, yeah, it's a very long game. I would honestly, a hand on heart, I would say I've got average genetics compared to the guys who are at the top of the sport.
We spoke about this person just before the show. I've forgotten his name already, but he doesn't look real. It looks like he looks photoshopped.
Have you seen his transformation?
No.
From 2018. In 2018, he's got a decent physique, just a guy that goes to the gym, maybe lifts weights 4 times a week, and he looks like that now. That's 5 years ago. So that is...
It just seems impossible.
That's not human, that level of genetics. That's something else. That is a new species of human we're seeing. I'm not even joking. It's the guys in the Olympia stage, and they're all Mr. Olympias throughout time, have been genetic marvels. If they weren't doing bodybuilding, they'd be excelling in some other sport.
Something, right?
Yeah, they'd be at the top of some other sport. So
this new species of human, which by the way is scientifically not possible, but just to clarify, but there could be mutations in his genome that mean that maybe he has reached a level of muscle mass that no one's ever achieved before in the history of humanity.
Possibly, yeah.
I mean, there are these cows. Have you seen these cows? That
the myostatin inhibitors.
Yes,
yeah.
Myostatin deficient.
Mm-hmm.
They are so. I mean, these cows are so big.
Yeah,
it looks like it's not real, but it's real.
It's real.
These are real cows.
Real,
and they're just Mr. Olympias in cow form.
Yeah.
So maybe there's something there with this person.
Possibly, yeah. Maybe that is what we see in the likes of him. Like Ronnie Coleman, perhaps there is a myostatin deficiency there.
But is this person, the one we're talking about, and I wish I could remember his name,
Robio, something like that. Yeah.
Is he must be bigger though than Ramy and Coleman. It looks like because there is a photo of him on stage versus everyone else, and it's like this guy's been like Photoshop, but it's not.
I don't know, looking at him, I wouldn't say he's bigger than Ronnie Coleman. I wouldn't say he's bigger than Ramy, but it's just the way he's put together. He's very narrow through the shoulders.
Right.
I think he's short.
Right. So Ronnie Coleman was really that big.
Yeah.
He was impossibly big.
Impossibly big, yeah.
That's so interesting.
So standing on stage, Ronnie Coleman stood on stage, shredded to the bone, not an ounce of body fat on him, high 120s, 130s.
What will you be when you're on stage?
I'll hopefully be in the 260. So I was 250 last year on stage against another genetic marvel, Andrew Jacked.
Is he a British guy?
No, he's Nigerian, but he's now 5th in the world. Wow. So he won his pro card. He beat me to win his pro card. What
was he like in person? Very impressive.
Up until I saw Michael Crizzo 3 weeks ago, I've never been in awe of physique in my entire life. You can't comprehend what you're looking at. It just doesn't make sense. He's wider than a house. He's got a 30-inch waist. Like, it just doesn't make sense how he's put together. That's God given. You can't build that. He will have looked like that regardless.
Really?
Of any training he does, anything he eats, he will look like that.
Wow.
It's he's a genetic marvel. So to see that, compete against that wasn't the best.
It's cool. You obviously wanted to win. You wanted to win, right?
Yeah. So personally, I don't know if people will agree, but I thought I was more conditioned than him. Right. So I had him on that front, but I was nowhere near in terms of his flow and his shape.
Could you beat him?
No.
That's interesting.
No. And you know how tenacious I am.
I know.
This.
No, I know you are. Yeah.
I couldn't beat a Pete. No.
He's too good. He'd have to have an off day.
A very off day.
A very bad day. You'd have to have your best day.
I'd have to, number one, add another 20 pounds to my stage weight and be 100%, and for him to be drastically off. to place higher. Yeah.
Tell me about your mindset. Like, what do you think about to motivate yourself through the whole year? Like, do you have visions of the future where you've got medal around your neck? Like,
yeah.
Tell me about that then.
So yeah, I picture it every day. Like, I talk about me standing next to pros and beating them. Like, I'm not even a pro yet.
Right.
So I'm not even in that realm yet.
Right.
So it's been a dream of mine since I was 18 when I decided like bodybuilding was going to be my thing. To get that professional card. I've been close twice, come second twice in my class. But I feel next year's my year. I truly believe that.
Do you visualize your success?
Yeah.
Every day?
Like, every day.
Yeah.
Every day.
It's very important.
I don't even think I do it intentionally. I think it generally just happens.
Yep.
Like, people ask like what motivates and drives me. At this point, I don't know anymore. I think I'm just so I've been locked into this goal for so long. It's just me.
Where and when is the show?
The professional qualifier will hopefully be the first weekend of June. The show that I want to do. There are many other shows across the world that you can do, but the one I'm targeting is the Alicante Pro Qualifier in the first weekend of June. So
you're going to go a couple of days earlier, get on the beach?
I'll go about. No, I'll definitely go on the beach.
No suntan?
No, just if you burn, you get skin inflammation, so that can impact your look.
So you're going to be in a dark room in Alicante?
Probably, yeah. From about the Tuesday before the show, yeah. So my best mate, Greg Taylor,
Aberdeen boy.
You know, yeah.
Aberdeen boy, yeah.
Greg Taylor, he done that show last year. This year, sorry. So I went and supported him at that show.
And it was nice?
Yeah. Unfortunately, he came third that day.
Is he also looking to become professional?
Yeah. He's Greg's phenomenal. Yeah.
Why has Aberdeen become like a bodybuilding hub? Like, there's lots of bodybuilders in Aberdeen now, amateur, or have I got that totally wrong?
Yeah, there's a great scene in Aberdeen.
The show, the Granite City show, is that one of the reasons?
No, I don't know what it is. There's not a lot to do in Aberdeen. I might be down to it.
Because male and female, there seems to be a cluster,
great scene, a
cluster of people doing it.
Yeah, big time. I don't know. I've not lived in Aberdeen for 10 years, so I'm not quite sure why that is.
It could be because, I mean, to be fair to Aberdeen, I mean, there are things.
Yeah, I shit in Aberdeen all the time.
It's probably because there's a lower population density. There's relatively more people doing it. There's been some successes. They've got the show, and maybe people decide to be in that scene.
Yeah,
you know, and you make friends, and
I mean,
training
it's quite
feels
funny
good.
as well. So we brought this up on my podcast. Scottish Silverback podcast, by the way.
Scottish Silverback
podcast.
And what do people learn on the Scottish Silverback contest? How to get jacked. Genuinely, I'm not taking.
We just have a laugh. We just sit there and have a laugh.
As bodybuilders,
we'll review shows and things like that, and talk about.
That sounds fun.
It's good fun.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
We haven't done it in a while actually, but we're planning to get it up and running again in the new year.
Well, if you want a guest feature on gut health, just hit me up.
Yeah, 100%.
You've come on here twice. I'll be very happy.
I know I owe you.
I'll be very, very happy to do it. Be very, very happy to do it.
All the top bodybuilders in Scotland are
listening to the Silverback podcast.
No. Would arguably not be from dense population places in Scotland. So,
interesting.
For instance, I'm from Aberdeen. Greg's from just outside Aberdeen. Jack Gunn is from Highlands. Josh Dougal is from the Borders. Apologies if I've missed anyone out. Sorry. There's many other physiques that aren't, your dense population centres such as Glasgow and Edinburgh. Is there something in that genetically?
Maybe.
I don't know.
No,
farmer boy. I don't know.
That's interesting. Actually, maybe
my dad's side are all
farmers.
Are all Truchters from Banff. So, not farmer stock way back, but is there something in that? I don't know.
Big hands, thick set, super tough.
Size 13 feet.
Genuinely
size 13 feet. I size 13 feet when I was 13.
You're joking?
Yeah, I looked ridiculous. I was 5 feet with size 13 feet. It was a nightmare. So.
The farmers are tough. I remember when I was working as a doctor in Aberdeen, the farmers, they're dying and they're like, I am fine.
Yeah, there is something to that.
I'm literally fine.
There is something to that because most strong men are farmer stock. So there must be some sort of genetic component there with...
They're bred strong.
Yeah.
I mean, we literally had someone come in who was literally close to dying from sepsis, from a lung infection, and was just, I am just feeling a wee bit nae-well. He literally about to die. Blue fingers, blue lips, mottling all over their body. I remember they came in and we were all like, oh! Yeah. And we had all consultants, ended up being okay and moved to a different part of the ward. But it was just like, wow, this person, he must have been feeling so bad. Yeah. Because there's bacteria everywhere and there's systemic inflammation, but I just feeling a wee bit nae-well.
Yeah. That's mad.
Straight on the oxygen, tough place. So just to go back to your prep then, how does the anabolic side change over the prep?
So
you do less or you do more? Because that's an interesting point, isn't it?
It's changed every time I've prepped.
Oh, interesting.
So what I'd like to do, I keep spitting anywhere.
Nobody can see that, don't worry.
Good. What I'd like to do is probably start low, which I kind of always do. I'll peak up and then I'll kind of drop the drug load towards the end. Not right to what it was at the start, but I will drop it back down because these drugs, they do cause inflammatory responses. It's still a foreign body, things like that. So I think to bring a a fresher physique, I think I need to change my approach slightly by tapering them down rather than tapering them up.
That's interesting.
So one thing I've done with my client James this year was we were using Trenbolone, and before his last show, or second last show, we decided to take that out because, again, we go back to that I felt it was making his physique look worse, not better. So we took out what is considered probably the harshest drug in that stack, and his physique looked better.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so it's these wee things.
So information's important.
Yeah.
Now, what about like just the average person who's considering doing a steroid cycle? Mm-hmm. How do they do it safely? Should they be doing it? Like,
I'll touch on that bit first.
So should they be doing it?
No.
Yes.
If you are not going to compete in an untested bodybuilding show, no. If you're doing it cosmetically, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. You should not be doing it cosmetically. Now, I've got clients who do it cosmetically, and we've sat down, I've given them my opinion on it, and if they're happy with my opinion but still want to go ahead with it, I'll absolutely guide them in the right direction. And if they want to use it recreationally, that's absolutely fine. I'll guide them in the right way. But they know my opinion is that if you do not compete in untested bodybuilding, you shouldn't be doing cycles of anabolic steroids.
And that's because of the side effects, the risks?
It just adds another dimension to training and something we love. It adds a health risk.
Yep.
You're adding a health risk to something that is incredibly good for you.
Yeah, because a lot of, I say a lot, I've only been to this place once in my life and I'm not going back. Ocean Beach, Ibiza.
Right, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, not somewhere I ever want to go now.
Yeah, it's not for me. I need to be careful because my friend's having a stag do next year and we're going to Ocean Beach, but I actually can't go because I'm actually going to San Diego on that day. But right. Ocean Beach, I would hedge a bet to say a decent proportion of the men Ocean Beach have timed a cycle for their Ocean Beach appearance.
I have dieted male clients for such a event, I know. And trust me, I told them when they started, this is pointless.
I think that is, well, I think it's actually fascinating because it just clusters people who want that photo on Ocean Beach where they're looking their absolute best and they can recycle it. But the other thing as well is it's mainly other men who they're looking at. And
I get no female attention ever. Like, for the record, no female attention ever.
Zero female attention.
None. Women don't like it. Women
because you're too big.
Yeah, I know I'm the extreme side of things, but women don't particularly like very in shape men, regardless if that's natural or not.
Because it looks unnatural. And it's too extreme.
I don't feel women like men that are too in shape because it makes them feel bad about how they look.
Oh, interesting.
I think that's what it is. Whereas if you look at women who are in the bodybuilding scene, they love it, but they've got physiques to match.
And that maybe explains why a lot of bodybuilding couples exist.
Yes, and that's why
they gravitate towards each other.
They gravitate towards it for that reason. Also, like it works a lot easier. Like my girlfriend competes, and it makes sense that we both prep meals. We both have to
you both understand.
It's far easier. But yeah, getting back to the point, it's most women don't particularly want someone who's jacked up like that, and
they just want an athletic physique.
Yeah, just a nice physique.
Healthy, athletic physique. Looks after themselves, eats well. Yeah, I hear you. But that's not what some people think. Some people think the bigger I get, the more attention I get. But actually, it's other men.
It's the opposite, It's
men.
Yeah.
It's like beards.
Men nonstop.
The bigger your beard gets, the more compliments you get from men.
From men, yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Literally. It's a rule of the universe.
I looked at my my Instagram ratios the other day with a client. It's like 87% men follow me. The rest is women. I guarantee most of those women are bodybuilders in that scene.
Fascinating, absolutely fascinating. So you wouldn't recommend it, but let's talk about testosterone replacement therapy then, because that I think is different. That's trying to optimize something that declines from the age of 30, more so when you're 40. And there's also a difference between bound and free testosterone, and that ratio gets even more exacerbated the older you get because you produce more sex hormone binding globulin, and your test goes down, which means that there's less free test because you've got that binding globulin and you've got albumin. Sorry, I'm getting really technical now. Basically, as you get older, you have less test to work with. And test makes you feel good as a man for a number of different reasons. There's the bone density, the muscle mass, the libido, the appetite, the sleep, the general sense of well-being, so on, so on, so on.
Yeah.
So we've talked about not doing a cycle unless you're doing an untested bodybuilding competition. What about if you're just wanting to be a better version of yourself? Is there a different type of way to approach this? Like TRT?
We're still talking TRT?
TRT, yeah.
TRT, we now have clinics in the UK that you can go to, get your bloods tested and see where you actually sit. If you are, sitting within a decent range between the what's that? I don't know what the average range is. It's between 8 and 29.
The units millimoles. Depend on whether you're in the US or UK, but yes. So
is it millimoles or nanomoles?
It's minimals, I think.
Yeah,
I'm getting myself confused.
8 and 29.
Yeah,
yeah. So if you sit within that, then probably not. There's probably no reason to. However, though, if you are a man who
nanomoles, 8.6 to 29 nanomoles, 300 to 1,000 milligrams per deciliter, I think, or micrograms per deciliter in the US. Yeah.
So just say you were at the higher end of that for most of your life, and then it starts to decline. Then maybe you could argue, right? Well, I want to push that up to where I was. But if you still sit within a good range, then you are considered probably healthy in that. But if you were to slip below that eight mark, then I would recommend.
But would you guide it by that level, or because you don't know what you were when you were, say, 19 or 20, when you probably felt your best.
Yeah.
So I guess from my perspective, and this is a non-qualified perspective as someone who doesn't practice as a medic anymore and someone who's not a subject matter expert in this, and without a license practice, but just get it all out there. Just get it all out. There's kind of two approaches.
Yep.
Are you experiencing symptoms which could be in keeping with low test?
Yep.
Mood changes, libido, losing muscle, I guess appetite potentially, that general sense of well-being, all of which could be attributed to other things. But are you experiencing these things? If so, you could just start. And you could just take your base no matter what it is. You say, I've noticed a change. I'm getting older. It's not like I used to be. I'm going to start. That's one approach.
Yeah.
The other approach would be to take 3 different readings at the same time every day with a reputable clinic. And if you're at the bottom end of the range or you're below, then you could start.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't recommend that someone starts unless they were experiencing the symptoms. So it's a bit more nuanced.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, I think that most men should consider it if they've noticed a change.
Yeah.
And if they want to be the best versions of themselves, looking forwards into the future, if being the best version of themselves embodies some of the things we've been discussing today, like being in good physical condition, feeling like you did when you were younger, kind of makes sense to consider it as part of the toolkit.
Yeah, one of the things that I like to remind myself is like, up until 150 years ago,
we didn't live this long.
Yeah, we didn't live as long. So on an evolutionary point of view, the human body hasn't matched what we can do medically now. So for instance, if you were living to your late 30s, early 40s, just say 1,000 years ago, then we haven't evolved quick enough to make it so that our testosterone lasted till our 60s, 70s and 80s.
Right.
So it's almost as if medical intervention is probably required at some point for almost all men.
And if you're doing everything else correctly and you still feel like I want a little bit more, if you're sleeping correctly, you're eating well, you're lifting heavy weights, you're not drinking, you're not smoking, you're taking all your other supplements, kind of feels like the next logical step.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And it's good to see clinics in the UK offering this, because typically we're very, very, very many years behind the US.
Yeah.
Probably still are, actually.
Well, maybe,
but it's on offer now.
I mean, look at HRT for women in this country. It's like, oh, you feel bad? HRT. But still, like TRT is like, oh,
but you can't get TRT in the NHS.
Yeah.
You can if you're like what they call hypogonadic, like if you have like
zero,
extreme symptoms,
right? Yeah,
and if you're I think if your puberty is delayed, then maybe you can get access to it. I think we're getting now into a realm of like hormones and gender transitioning and stuff like that, which I don't know much about at all. So I'll just bring us back to TRT. So do any of your clients take TRT?
Yeah. A good, the guys who aren't kind of doing anything bodybuilding wise in terms of like shows and stuff, there are a few clients who run TRT just for health reasons.
How do they feel? They enjoy it?
Yeah. Yeah. I think they are very happy they took that step. None of them I've never come across a client
who started and
then stopped. Yeah. So that says it all.
Absolutely. And I know several CEOs and in particular the US, they're on TRT because they believe it makes them perform better, which I can understand.
Yeah.
I mean, look, have you seen the before and afters of Jeff Bezos?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's TRT.
There you go. Yeah.
Elon Musk, he's out of shape now, but at one point, TRT.
Yeah.
And if all the Silicon Valley billionaires are doing it with their unlimited resource and their obsession with health and well-being, maybe there's something in that, right?
I know, maybe,
there could be.
Yeah, I think still like people hear testosterone and it still has that.
Steroid.
Yeah, it still has that.
Even though it's
stigma.
produced within the body itself.
Exactly. So you're just more natural.
Good stuff. So we'll do some quick fire things now. So if someone came to you for the first time, they want to gain as much muscle as possible because they want to get bigger, what are the core things that you would recommend to them?
We're talking like a complete beginner.
Complete beginner.
So complete beginner, you need to establish number one, an eating routine. So many people in this country do not have that nutritional knowledge. They've not eaten properly for most of their life, processed foods, so on and so forth. So eating on a regular basis, single source meals, maybe 4, 5, possibly even 6 times a day is something that needs to go in immediately. Learn about nutrition, learn how your body works, learn what foods work for you, learn what works within your lifestyle as well. So I can't just hand you any old nutrition plan. It has to be fairly tailored to you.
How do you work through that with your clients? Trial and error.
Yeah, so the way I do it now is I'll look at someone's photos that they send me with a consultation form and I will just go 2,300 calories.
No way.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I don't use any kind of formulas to work.
You know enough now?
I think I know enough now where I can judge by someone's background, what they're currently doing and know roughly where they need to be calorie-wise.
That's really interesting.
I don't think I'm wrong. Maybe 3 out of 100 times I'm wrong, and I need to either push
Amazing.
it up or pull it down. I would say most guys and girls who have been coaching for long enough do that.
They know. They can eyeball it.
They can eyeball it off. Like, so if someone says to me, here's my food diary, cool, right, that's about 1,800 calories. You're doing this in the gym, you're doing that in your work, you're doing that in your social life.
Yep.
Okay, well, if you want to build muscle, probably need to sit around maybe, let's start 2,4, 2,5. I'm rarely wrong. So, yeah.
Okay, so eating routine, what about training?
Training wise, I would just go into learn the fundamentals of lifting. So learn basic movements, learn them inside out, learn how to connect with those movements, and practice immaculate form and technique from the very beginning. Don't develop habits, poor lifting habits, which I see all the time.
In your work, you see it all the time?
All the time.
What kind of things do you see? Like, what are the classic mistakes?
Half rep squats, stuff like that.
Yep.
Using machines. Range of motion is usually the worst one you see. So yeah, learn all the fundamentals. You don't need to be doing a 5-6 day training split. Just come into the gym once or twice a week, do an upper and lower split, something like that. So work your upper body one day, work your lower body the next day. That's more than enough. Learn the insides out of training and maybe do one exercise per body part depending on which day it is, and that is more than enough in terms of training itself. People go far too overboard. They get a training plan that's got 5 days in it. That's interesting. You've got 3 different weeks worth of rotations. Like, someone who's just starting the gym does not need that. Sometimes when I hand a complete beginner a plan, I do feel a little bit guilty because I'm like, there's nothing really too substantial here, but there doesn't need to be.
It's just 2 days a week, upper, lower.
Doesn't need to be, yeah.
And what about cardio? Just a basic level, get the heart moving.
Depends on what they're looking to do. If they are genuinely all out, I just want to be as big as humanly possible. Cardio is probably not needed, but that again depends on their circumstance. So if you spend the whole day sitting down, yeah, probably be 20 minutes in the morning. We'll go.
One thing you hear sometimes from women is they say, I don't want to get too bulky.
Yeah.
Is this a bit of a myth?
No, people they say that.
Yes, they say that, but can they get too bulky?
No. If you've got people who dedicate. You've heard me speak.
Yeah.
Dedicate their
the last 15 years.
their entire life to this. Like, I don't want to say sacrifice. I don't like the word sacrifice because I'm not a soldier.
It's not a soldier
going to war. You know what I mean?
I mean, I laugh when I see things like leg day going to war. It's like,
shut up. Yeah.
And then you're not. You're actually not.
You go to the gym. It's 10 minutes.
You're going to like an air conditioned gym.
Yeah. So
you're not going to war, man.
Exactly. So these people who dedicate their life to this, if they're struggling to gain tissue, you're not going to do it accidentally.
Yeah.
So
unless you're like the freak of nature, but if you were, you'd already know.
You definitely already know.
You'd already know, right?
You'd know when you're 10 years old. Yeah. Muscle enhances the look of the physique.
Absolutely.
Especially in women, like when it comes to like their lower half. It's you're not going to get bulky accidentally. No chance. And would you apply the same advice for women and men? Like you both have to lift heavy. Yep.
It's the same.
Yeah.
Same
Heavy
formula.
to failure. I tend to find
if they're a beginner, do they go to failure?
No. Sorry. If we're dealing with beginners, probably not. No, there's probably no reason for you. You can get the stimulus of just lifting weights for 3 sets is going to be enough to stimulate the muscle to grow. Failure is probably a technique you start to use once you become a little bit more advanced and know what training is. Even then, there's guys who've been training 10 years, don't know what failure is. And again, we go back to me talking about, I love showing people that. Like, trust me, your body can tolerate a lot of stress, a lot of pain. But people, I've been showing myself. I remember my first time training with Graham, it was a chest press. Did you ever go to Bodyworks when it was open? Yeah.
Hey, I had some great sessions in there.
I love Bodyworks. I loved it.
I had some really good sessions in there. That was a good gym.
Graham put me through 1 set of plate-loaded chest press. And I was like, I called my mate immediately after, the guy I trained with at the time. I was like, we're training wrong. 1 set. And he destroyed me on 1 set. And I was like, God, I didn't realize he could actually do that. And it just takes someone who's more experienced to show you. I'm sure I train with Anth Bales all the time, a professional from England. I train with him all the time. And he shows me something every single time that you're constantly pushing barriers. And
wow.
I would say everyone, 99.9% of people in gyms do not realize just how far they can take their physique when it comes to weight training.
So training to failure is one of your key pieces of advice for someone who's a little bit more advanced.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like you've been going to the gym for a period of time, you've built a base. How do you know if your coach is good or not? Like what are...
Right. So the theory...
Some people say you never trust a skinny chef.
There you go. Right. So there are many people who say that a PT being in shape is not a clue as to how good they are.
Right.
Yes, it is. It 100% it is. I don't know how anyone can listen to someone who doesn't have a build themselves. I wouldn't listen to someone about business advice who had never run a business.
Right.
You would never do that.
There's a lot of those people trying to sell those services, by the way.
Yeah. I can imagine. But that makes no sense to me. Like, you heard my example. Who was the best bodybuilder in Aberdeen? Graham Park. Cool, go to him.
Yep, absolutely.
That just makes sense to me. So,
with you 100%.
Being in shape doesn't make you the best coach or PT? No, it doesn't. But there should be some experience there of your own
trial and error. Yeah.
100%. So, but at the end of the day, the theory, nutrition, training, anabolics, things like that, it's all known. There's nothing really that's too, there's nothing that's hidden. There's nothing that's a secret. A good coach is a good communicator, someone who understands issues and problems and roadblocks, and someone who has a good eye when it comes to the competitive side of things. But for a good personal trainer, will be a good listener, a good communicator, know their stuff, be in shape themselves, and be able to help you get over, you're going to fall off the wagon, you're going to cheat in your diet, they're going to be someone that can motivate you to push through those barriers. And that's a good personal trainer, in my opinion, is someone like that. Not someone who's flash on Instagram.
Yep. Not
someone who can, regurgitate a textbook start to finish. Is someone who is a genuinely good human being and a good communicator.
Nice person, they can talk to you, and they've also walked the walk.
Yeah.
I'm with you 100%, by the way.
Yeah.
I really have never understood, you just, you don't need to have been X to be good at Y. That is true, but think about running a business as the proxy, because that's kind of what I'm doing. There's no amount of lectures, textbooks, conversations you can have with people that really, truly teach you how to do it in real life.
Yeah.
And I firmly believe that you need to have done at least some of it so you understand. Like imagine giving doctors advice about practicing medicine, having never practiced medicine. It's like, really?
Yeah, exactly. That would raise a few eyebrows, but in the fitness game, that does not happen.
Yeah, there's no base accreditation.
Yeah.
So we talked about failure, we talked about a good PT. What about, losing weight? So let's just say someone wants to look good for a holiday in the summer. How long out, this is your average person, by the way, so how long out should they be thinking, right, okay. Now, I know the ideal thing would be you train all year.
Yeah, you're in a good routine all year. Yeah,
that'd be the ideal. But let's just say, because a lot of people do these crash diets, how much time should you give yourself so you don't have to do a crazy crash diet, and how would you work through that?
So let's just say you've got a holiday in June. I would start 1st of January. Now, that doesn't mean you have to revolutionize your life. It doesn't mean you have to reinvent the wheel. You can still have a meal out every week with your other half.
Yep.
You don't have to be, have no social life, so on and so forth. You can still do all those things and still lose weight nice and slowly up until your holiday. But you just have to give yourself enough time. It's a time frame that people kind of, that is the thing that hurts people the most. It's not the diet itself.
It's how long.
It's how long. So, like you said, crash diets, they are ineffective and dangerous due to their time frame. A crash diet may be 3 weeks.
2.
Yeah, 2, exactly. Give yourself 20 weeks and just come down nice and slow, making small changes here and there. And you'll be very surprised with what you can do and achieve in that time frame. And because it's not as intense, you're not craving all the time, you're not starving all the time. That's the big factor. But again, at the end of the day, discipline is still key. There's no substitution for discipline. Will always be an aspect of dieting. There's no product, there's no drug that can counter discipline.
Consistency and discipline.
Yeah. So,
and do you advise people build up their cardio slowly, reduce calories slowly?
Yeah.
Do people have to track their calories? They have to track their calories.
No. You can, if we're going down to the bare bones, if you have 3 square meals a day.
There you go.
Yep. And then everyone can kind of roughly eyeball.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very doable without having a meal plan set in front of you. It is very, very doable.
But to be sure, you'd probably want to track calories.
Yeah, just to be sure of what you're taking in. And then it allows for flexibility as well. So if you're taking in 2,000 calories a day and for whatever reason you're stuck at a meeting at work, you can be like, right, well, I missed that meal. That means I can take those calories into the next meal, so on and so forth. So it's just about finding that. But, a lot of people kind of paint the picture of, you shouldn't be counting calories. So it's bad for your mental health, blah, 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 blah. I was like, what other method do you propose then?
Well, there isn't one.
There isn't one.
Yeah,
so
there isn't one. Someone else counting calories for you would be the other way to do it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Have the meal prepped and so on.
Yeah. So
can you gain muscle and lose fat at the same time?
Yes. So we're talking about the 2 extreme ends probably with that one. So a complete beginner, yes, you can build muscle and lose body fat at the same time. And then the other extreme end is obviously the competitive bodybuilding end, where there's high levels of performance enhancing drugs and things like that. But if you, again, we're assuming this person's extremely consistent. So if someone who is 100% consistent all the time, year round, you're either gaining weight or losing body fat. There's no in between.
That's interesting.
So by the extremes, Yes, it's possible. But as you come into that middle ground of consistency, discipline, so on and so forth, I'm going to say no.
What about supplements? What do you
health supplements.
Health supplements. What do you yourself take, and what do you recommend for clients?
Right, we'll be here all day if I say what I take.
Oh, really?
Probably
the same as me, to be honest.
Yeah.
L-theanine.
Yep.
Creatine.
Yep.
Vitamin D.
Yep.
Omega-3.
Yep.
Magnesium.
Yep.
Zinc.
Yep.
Copper.
Yep. Part of a complex, yeah.
It's part of a multivitamin complex.
Yeah.
What about bioflavonoids like quercetin, resveratrol?
No.
Grapeseed extract?
Yes.
Cranberry?
Yes, as part of another multi-supplement, yeah.
Collagen?
I've never taken collagen, no.
I'm also not taking, but I just thought I'd throw it into the mix there. Ashwagandha?
Yep.
Melatonin we've talked about.
Yep. Krill oil, nattokinase, if that's how you pronounce it. Super K.
Yep. Should we distill the essence for someone who's just not wanting to be a pro bodybuilder and who's not a health obsessed CEO?
Yeah, so my baseline supplement stack for everyone, this is where everyone starts, would be natural anti-inflammatory, so like curcumin. This is assuming they weight train.
Yep.
So curcumin, an omega-3, a high quality omega-3, vitamin D,
yep,
zinc, and a multivitamin.
There you go.
That's my stack.
It's a really solid one.
Yeah, that everyone should take regardless of what your goals are.
If someone put a gun to my head, I think I would say exactly the same thing. Curcumin, turmeric is a little bit controversial, but the vitamin D...
That's purely from a weight training
fish
point
oil,
of view.
yeah, 100%. The vitamin D, the fish oil, with a good EPA to DHA ratio,
yep,
and basic multivitamin. Creatine as well. I would add creatine in for everybody.
Yeah.
As a staple, male, female, young, old, why not? I also think the 5 gram a day thing needs to go in the bin. Like if you're a much bigger person with much more muscle mass, you shouldn't be taking 5 grams a day. You should be having like 15 or 20 grams a day.
Yeah, I take 20.
Yeah, there we go. So this blanket 5 grams for everybody makes no sense. You know, it's not like psilocybin, which we were talking about earlier, where the body weight, body mass doesn't filter in.
Yeah.
It does here. So that's very good. What about cardio? Do people have to do cardio? Or is it just, it's good for you, so you should do it?
There's so many different levels to cardio. So for me, the way it changes for me, so in my off season, I'm doing cardio maybe at the start of my off season just as out of routine, just to get up and do something, get my body moving.
Flat steps, Stairmaster?
Stationary bike.
Stationary
bike, yeah. So that's what I'm doing just now. And then that may switch to, I need to use a little bit more cardio in terms of an appetite.
Builder, suppressant?
Yeah.
Builder or suppressant?
Yeah, so I want to push my appetite a little bit more so I can eat more. So an extra 10 minutes.
Just out of interest, can you swim?
No. I
don't mean
I can swim.
Can you technique swim, but what happens when you go in a pool?
I'm bottom heavy, so my legs sink. It's
shouldn't laugh.
It's funny.
That's quite funny actually.
So I think it was when I realised I couldn't swim. It must have been like,
hopefully not when you were in the deep end.
No, 2016. It was like the first holiday I'd been on for a long, long time. Like that kind of holiday.
Yeah.
I think the last one before that was like Magaluf 2010. And
I won't ask you about that. Don't worry. That's for your podcast.
I think we actually have spoken about it before. Actually,
not this podcast.
It was like 2016. I was probably the heaviest I've ever been. I was like, whoa, this is out of the question now.
Wow.
So yeah, I love swimming.
Just sink to the bottom.
Yeah.
I swim 2 or 3 times a week. Mm-hmm. I don't sink.
At Toll Cross?
I glide. No, at the Western Baths in the West End. Toll Cross I need to go to because it's 50 metres rather than 25.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Swimming's just technique.
Yeah.
It's technique. Mm-hmm. And I learned that the hard way. Mm-hmm. I went to the Western Baths Masters Swimming Club. Having done a lot of swimming since January to May, my technique really improved. I was gliding through the water. I thought, right, this is it. I'm ready to go. Masters Swimming Club. People have been swimming for the last like 5 decades. Everyone was much older than me. I thought, this is going to be no bother. Uh-huh. Within 10 minutes, I was dying.
Smoked.
I was dying.
Yeah.
I was absolutely dying, and they were just gliding through tumble turn, tumble turn, butterfly, legs on the pool boy. I was just like, goodness me, this is really hard. And I remember I was up for an hour and a half after. I don't know what this is saying about me. An hour and a half after, I couldn't sleep because my heart rate was so high. I was done. I was spent. I was annihilated.
Yeah.
But as you go back, your technique gets better and better and better, and then it really is just technique.
Did you have any swimmers at your school growing up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we...
They're in at 6 a.m. every day.
Yeah,
getting their lengths in.
We had a guy, I was at primary school with him as well, Chris Breen. And I remember, so these people at a swimming gala, school swimming gala every year. It was just a way to get out of class, basically. But it was good fun. But I remember Chris we were doing front crawl, sprinting, and he was on his back doing back crawl and just a fish.
Too good.
And I still picture it because he was laughing as he was doing it because he was ahead of everyone, no bother at all. And I just thought, that's so cool.
It's so cool.
That is so cool.
The butterfly also looks sick.
Yeah.
When you see someone flying up through the water.
I feel like I'm drowning when I'm doing butterfly. But no, one thing I'd like to do post bodybuilding is actually triathlon.
Oh yeah, man.
That is genuinely something I want to do. Post bodybuilding, something completely different. I'll still lift weights.
You're going to have to
downsize drastically.
I remember we were speaking because I was training for one this summer. I ended up doing this Ring of Steel Sky race instead, which has a similar issue. The bigger you are and more muscle you have, the harder it is to do hill running, obviously, because you're going up with more weight. Same is true with triathlon. Triathletes obsess with having the lightest possible gear to the point where it's like 200 gram, 100 gram difference. Yeah. What we're talking about here with you is 120 kilograms, 130 kilograms. Yeah. Now the bike should be okay. The run will be bloody hard. Yeah. And if you don't sink, you should be fine in the swim too. Yeah. Right? But the run for you at the end would just be almost impossible. It's too much weight to move.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't be this size when I
You'd be down to 100.
And maybe less.
You'd be TRT, 100 kg.
Yeah.
Flying.
So
overtaking me. Bye, James.
It's definitely something I want to do. Bodybuilding will always be my true love. I'll always do it. But yeah, I'd like to do something like that, something really testing that's going to keep me committed and so on and so forth. So I said I would stop bodybuilding when I'm 40. We'll see where I am at 40. But I have to.
That's just an arbitrary health thing, right?
Yeah, and not only that, I've been doing it my whole adult life. There's not many guys that I came up with that are still around. There's in Britain, there's me, Drew Walker, Harry Harris, Dave. I forget Dave's second name.
Greg.
No, Greg started later.
Is he newer? Yeah.
Yeah, Greg started in his late 20s. So yeah, there's not a lot of guys around, and that's
quite telling.
It's quite telling of how harsh bodybuilding is. Now, I think that may be more the case of guys who have done it from 16 to say 25, and they kind of feel they've missed out on life a wee bit, and now they want to kind of make up for that.
That makes sense.
Maybe there's some of that. It's not so much health related.
And family reasons, can you conceive? Are you fertile and all that?
Yeah.
On the anabolics?
I know plenty of bodybuilders who have conceived while on large amounts of anabolics. There doesn't seem to be... I've seen blood work from clients where LH and FSH have been bottomed out ridiculously low, to the point where they can't even read it. It's that low, and I've been able to conceive. So,
really?
Yeah. So
with no issues.
Yep. So there's something there.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, because they trialed testosterone as a male birth control. I don't know what, 70s, I think.
I'm sure those guys enjoyed that.
I know. And they found it to be ineffective because it wasn't 100% reliable when you turn off LH and FSH.
That's fascinating because obviously in women, the estrogen, progesterone has a very potent impact in terms of cycle and so on and so forth. Right, Andy.
Cool.
Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks very much, mate. Thanks for having me on again.
Yeah.